In
And
progress.
welcome back into a brand new episode of Tribal Council Chat here on the Reality Realm Network. As always, we are your hosts. My name is Bruce Heller.
And my name's Brett Parnell.
And this is the first episode of a four-part series we're doing here on Tribal Council Chat called the Mount Rushmore series. And our thought behind this is, as you guys know, me and Brett are both sports fans. And with almost any sport, you can have this conversation, and people do of who are the four Mount Rushmore players of this sport, or this or that. And we're applying that to Survivor. So we've chosen who we think are the four Mount Rushmore figures of Survivor. A combination of the best, but also just most iconic, most important players to the history of the game. It is Boston Rob, Parvati, Tony, and Sandra. And we're starting off the series with Boston Rob. And we've got an awesome guest today. If you're listening to the show, you know Brett and I met on a Facebook group called Survivor Fan Jury. And we have a friend of ours and one of the biggest Rob fans I know from that group, Seth Bryant, is with us today. Thanks for coming on, dude.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Tribal Council
Thank you.
Chat.
So I am ready to dive into Boston Rob.
All right, let's get going. So, brief overview. Boston Rob was started on Survivor Season 4 Marquesas as a young, early 20s construction worker from Canton, Massachusetts. Big Red Sox fan, hence the attire today. Big Jets fan. He would be really shake up the game. Really, probably as I've said before, the first real game changer in Survivor. Rob was playing both sides. He had to deal with the tribe swap and navigate. He got voted out right after the merge and unfortunately didn't make the jury in his first season. But thanks to this gameplay, was still called back for All Stars, where he became one of the greatest players of all time. Probably playing one of the most dominant games of all time, coming up second, but still meeting his now wife on the show, and she was the inevitable winner of that. Mariano. Rob would come back again as a villains tribe member in Heroes versus Villains after some iconic blindsides in All Stars, as well as, like I said, in Marquesas. And then finally we get to his winning game, which is Redemption Island, where Rob plays as one of two players, almost kind of like where you were talking about Sports Boost, a series between him and Russell Hance. And whereas Russell is not included in his tribe, Rob just runs his tribe and goes all the way. And then we see a very different version of Rob on Winners at War. He's now a father of four. He's much older, but still loves the game, still wanted to play in such an iconic season. And while he ended up spending most of the game on the edge of extinction after using the same strategy to very different results, because it's much harder to play against Sarah Lucina and Sophie Clark, two of the best players of all time, as opposed to playing against the cast of Redemption Island with certain strategies that Rob employed perfectly on the 22nd season. He still made a lasting impact on such a historic game and competed well in edge challenges, and who knows, maybe if he ends up winning that challenge that Natalie eventually won, he could have won very far in that game as well. So welcome to the Boston Rob episode of Tribal Council Chats Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, so I think the plan we decided on was to just take this a season at a time. So starting with Marquesas, and obviously he hadn't, from Marquesas, he wasn't the legend he becomes, but what sticks out to Rob from Marquesas to you guys?
Do you want me to go?
I can go first. So, like Marquesas, he was like a big star of the pre-merge. I know some people say like it was an egregious choice for him having back on All Stars, but like he was really, in my mind, like the first person to give like great confessionals to the camera. I had a bit of that showmance with Sarah, and then yeah, he got taken out at the merge.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned confessionals. We did an episode about confessionals last week, and Brett mentioned the Rob confessional from Marquesas about fear keeps people in line.
Yeah, of course. He's so quotable like that.
Yeah. I've said also, like, the Mariano household rewatching Marquesas, those him and Sarah scenes have just got to be so awkward for the two of them to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Though, because it's interesting, you guys both brought up his relationship with Sarah, and to bring up another relationship in this pre-merge, and it's the Rob and Sean alliance,
I love the Rob and
which
Sean pairing.
is just such a great pair. It's funny that it comes up because I played an online reality game last year where I had a duo going with someone, and I called us in confessional the new version of Rob and Sean because I'm a Red Sox fan and she was a Yankee fan.
Nice.
But that was such a unique duo because it Boston and the Bronx together in a way that they never really have been in American culture, and those two really ran that first tribe until they got split up.
Mm-hmm. And Rob gets voted out at the merge, and unfortunately, Merge Boot did not make the jury this season. But how great would like young Rob have been as a juror? We got old Rob as a juror, but like young cocky Rob as a juror would have just been great television, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it would have given like a really iconic speech if he was like, say it was a jury of eight.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, for sure. But he ends up going at the merge, but he honestly like, he didn't play a bad game in Marquesas. It's like you said, people say it was a weird pick for All Stars. I think that's just because he didn't go very far. If he plays the same way and has the same confessionals but goes deeper into the game, which is just a matter of numbers, I don't think near as many people would question him on All Stars.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if he made final six or better, he'd be one of the top picks for All Stars. And
What's funny
and
is
it's controversial.
the funny thing with All Stars is
Newer to the show, and it's great looking at that in terms of actual numerical placement as opposed to All Stars being what value do you bring to the show. I'll make another kind of sports comparison like we've talked about, Bruce, and someone that you would know that I'm a big fan of. Brady Tkachuk was in the All-Star game for a couple of years now. Well, no Ottawa Senator deserves to be in the All-Star game other than the fact that Brady is great entertainment and he's an excellent player even though he plays for a horrible team.
yeah, that's fair. I The funny thing about All Stars is people say that about Rob. I would argue that Amber was a weird choice considering like the amount of screen time and confessionals we saw from her first season. And like both of these people ended up being really good picks for that season because look at the entertainment and the storyline they provided.
Yeah, Amber originally it was going to be Elizabeth on the season, and then they had to replace her with Amber. But the two of them, Rob and Amber, obviously make the season, at least for me, with their storyline.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a fun season. It's also a really rough season at other points. But
Mhm.
and I guess we can just move straight into All Stars now, unless either of you have anything else from Marquesas. But
No, it's like we segued in. So
Well,
already,
I guess the one thing I would add from cases before we just jump into All Stars is that time that they're separated from the tribe and the Robin Kathy interaction. That was such a great overnight split that really changed the way that Survivor was played. Because before then, well, I guess in Africa they had the quest, but before that was kind of where you started to see the players making Survivor a bit more unpredictable.
yeah, and I do like the Rob Kathy relationship because that carries over into All Stars also. And we've had Steven on who runs the Survivor quotes page on Twitter, and he's a big Kathy fan. So I'd love to hear
yes,
his
he is.
thoughts on that bond. But
Yeah.
the fun thing with Kathy is, and I'm getting a little off topic, but not really. Kathy was in that same boat with Lex at the merge, where Rob kind of sinks them. But she's not bitter about it. Rob still gets her jury vote, so I give her props for that, for essentially not handling it the way Lex did.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, as we move into All Stars, I think this is in my opinion, it's definitely the best non-winning game. And the only reason he didn't win is because he had the worst jury management, I think, by someone not named Hans.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Like, I don't blame, like, and I've said this before on the show. I might have said this texting with you before, but the whole like Robin, like, I don't feel bad for Lex one bit.
Yeah.
Like,
No, it's like post show. It's like you kind of see Lex sunk his own boat. So
yeah, Rob says it's just business, it's not personal, and Lex says you're being a bad friend. Lex had said this is just business, it's not friendship to Ethan and Colby right before that. So I don't want to hear it from him. At the same time, like, yeah, maybe Rob could have handled that a little bit better, jury management wise. I don't know, but he managed to take off Tom and Alicia also. So I think with just a
Into
little
the
bit
end
better
game.
jury management, he could have won this season because it was still close.
While we get into the end game, though, I want to go back to the beginning of the season, and because I think there's a lot of great moments with Rob's game in the pre-merge shoot
Oh, there is.
of All Stars before we get into that Lex moment. And some of them that I remember that come to mind is, of course, episode 1, the relationship with Amber. Um, the rivalry between both guys named Rob on Shapira.
Yeah.
The construct
mhm.
Bob putting his construction skills to work and probably building the best shelter of all time in that challenge where Rupert builds the worst shelter of all time. And also, one of the things that I find is just so on brand for Rob and hilarious, which is, when the tribes were given that box in tree mail with the 3 locks, and Rob's first go to mindset is, do you guys just want to smash it open?
Yeah, that's hilarious. The shelter building challenge, by the way, is one of my favorite challenges. I love the way they did that this season. Rob, the Shapira shelter Rob builds is amazing. Someone in a confessional says that Sesternino wasn't doing a ton to help with that. He was kind of ostracized by that tribe at that point anyway. But Rupert's bunker, shout out to that, because like that was just great television. And
Oh
then
yeah.
he gets referenced on Heroes versus Villains 12 seasons later.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, like as far as like shelter making, Rupert Shelter, that's like the funniest bad shelter I've
yeah,
seen.
I love because on Heroes versus Villains, and I guess that's a Rob season also, so we'll get there. But the villains are struggling to build a shelter, and Jerry goes, "Well, it's not the worst shelter in Survivor history. I was in that." But as far as Rob really, the pre-merge is where he kind of gets his footing, establishes an alliance at the beginning. It obviously becomes more than alliance, but establishes Amber as his right hand and really just kind of gets his footing and solidifies Shapira as a solid group so that when they're together at the merge, they stick together and he doesn't have to worry about people flipping or turning. Because
This is so perfect in Rob's game. It really starts all the way at the beginning, because when they're on original Shapira, he makes an alliance with Tom and Alicia.
uh-huh.
And then when they're on new Shapira after Saboga's absorbed, Rob then makes a sub alliance secondary with Jenna and Rupert.
Yeah.
And then when they have that infamous "you take care of her and I'll take care of you," he's made an alliance with Lex and Kathy. And therefore, yes, you're gonna at some point have to betray one of those alliances. But going into the merge, Rob's managed to make sure that no matter who wins immunity and no matter what happens, he has every option with pretty much everyone on the tribe other than maybe Sheehan.
Yeah. And I think Saboga getting dispersed, really, he used that to the best way possible, because Rupert and Jenna were kind of together at that point. So to attach him and Amber to another duo like that and have a solid group of 4 that's also 2 groups of 2 was really smart.
He's very smart.
I found that really interesting in that division in All Stars that Shapira got Rupert and Jenna, who were a duo, and Mogo Mogo, on the other hand, got Ethan and Jerry, who were opposed to each other on that first beach.
Yeah. I'm curious if it had been swapped, how that would have gone.
Yeah.
We'll never know, but we know Rob and Ethan are really close friends now. I don't know if they were friends back then or not, but
They are. Yeah, and even in that
Well,
season,
also-
there was a big anti-winner sentiment, and all of them were gone early.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Jenna was really the one driving the anti-winner thing.
Yes.
Though. So if she goes to Mogo Mogo and say Ethan goes to Shapira, maybe Ethan lasts a little bit longer because Jenna's not on this constant.
Jenna's not on that tribe. I still think he's gone early
Yeah.
March, even if he had survived it. But
He's still gone pretty early just because he was so good in Africa and so likable. But yeah. Now here's the interesting thing as we kind of reach the merge. The scene we see is like Brett just quoted it. He whispers to Lex, "Take care of her, I'll take care of you." When he tells Lex that Shapira is sticking together, he quotes himself as saying, "I'll take care of you if you take care of her, if I can."
I can.
Did he say the "if I can" originally, or did he
No.
just
At least
add
we
that in?
didn't see it after that
We
challenge.
didn't see it. That's a good point.
Oh, okay, because I've watched this a couple times, and they even put the subtitles on there. I'm like, if he's just adding that in and trying to get Lex to believe it, like, smart move there. Like, I don't know if it worked, but
Yeah, because even
I've always wondered.
after that challenge in that scene, Jeff's like, Lex, head out.
yeah,
So maybe he could have continued and said that if I can part. But
yeah,
I've always wondered because in that challenge, Nairobi is so specific. Nairobi is the capital of Kenya, whereas Kenya was where it was played. It always crossed my mind of, did Tom somehow still know the airport that he flew into, but not know the country he was flying into? Or was Rob feeding him the wrong answer in order to try to throw that challenge and get rid of Alicia instead of Amber?
maybe I could see it be either. Like, that is very much something like strategic that Rob would do, and just kind of try to break the game a little bit and save his ally. I don't know if I see him as the type to throw a challenge, but in that case, it would make sense. But I also could absolutely believe that Big Tom knew the name of the airport, but not the name of the country he was in. Like, that seems pretty on
that
brand for
sounds
him
on brand for
also.
Big Tom, yes.
I love Big Tom as a character, but like nothing with him surprises me at this point. And shout out to the episodes where we had Big Tom and Rupert as a duo together, by the way, before Rob kind of broke them up. They were made entertaining television together. But also, let's jump ahead a little bit and we can backtrack if we want to. Big Tom and Rupert. Rob saw that as a threat. Maybe the two of them could team up against him, and he does a perfect job sowing doubt between them.
Yeah.
And sets up Big Tom being voted out.
That's what wins him and Amber this season.
Yeah.
Because logical play from a strategic or a political decision would just say there's a couple and there's 3 of us. Whoever doesn't win immunity has to go.
Yeah. I don't know if Rupert would have turned if they don't take Big Tom out, because like we see from Pearl Islands also that Rupert is just blindly loyal, even if it doesn't benefit his game.
Yes.
Because they wanted to take out someone on Drake that I forget who it was, and Rupert's just incensed in a confessional that someone wanted to turn on one of their drakes, and I'm like, this benefits your trust. So I'm not entirely convinced that if Rob doesn't do this, Rupert doesn't still stick with him. But why take the chance? This was perfect, and it establishes, and it kind of takes care of his decision of which deal to follow through on between his deal with Tom and his deal with Rupert and Jenna. Also,
Yeah, and he like he starts this fight between Big Tom and Rupert, and then Rupert's like saying, "Did you or did you not tell us that we needed to vote Rob off?" And then because I think Rob knew at that point that both of them were gonna beat him
yeah,
at the end, so it's that, and since the three of them probably weren't gonna stick together, like because like you said about Rupert being very loyal, he's a very old school player, and so like once he had that 2-2 split, like him and Amber against Rupert and Jenna, it made it easy for Jenna to side with Rob and Amber.
yeah. Here's the interesting thing is, and me and Brett have talked about this a little bit. Through a fan page I used to run, I've messaged with Jenna before, and she is, at least at that time, was firmly believed that had it been a final three instead of a final two, she wins.
Yeah.
And I think so too. I think Rob beats Jenna in a final two, but
Yeah,
in a final three, Jenna is most likely the winner there.
because the final two we got was the two people that everyone was ticked off at. If you add a third person in there, I think Jenna probably does win just because she's not Rob or Amber.
Yeah.
I think Jenna wins no matter what. Rupert's vote, Tom's vote, Lex's vote, Alicia's vote.
Yeah,
Well, hold on. Well, Rupert actually made a deal with Boston Rob that if either of them got to end, they would have to vote for each other.
yeah,
And then I think Kathy is a Boston Rob vote, and Sheehan probably still votes for Amber. So,
yeah. Kathy's a Rob vote no matter who.
and then Jerry's kind of up in the air. So,
Yeah. And that's part of what I like about Kathy. Like, no matter how things went on this season, or the like, Kathy still saw the best in him, and like wanted him to do well, and gave him her jury vote. So
yeah, and probably would have voted for Rob against
anyone.
anyone on the cast, or if not almost
Oh,
anyone.
shout out to Kathy Vo for not being bitter on one of the craziest bitter juries of all time. Which bitter juries are a thing, but I'm of the thought that if the jury is bitter, it's the fault of the person they're bitter with. So Rob's a great player, but like I have to acknowledge with this season, like yeah, his jury management was bad. Like it is what it is. He's playing an incredible game, but it cost him a little bit the way he handled some things.
Yeah, no, even though Rob still gets Kathy's vote, like she acknowledges that on her jury speech that there was a different path, you didn't see it.
Yeah, but I think the jury, other than Lex, like I saw Lex's coming. The juror that surprised me was Big Tom saying, "Oh, good game, handshake," and then does the fake handshake and says, "Don't be stupid." I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." He's still really ticked off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was so rude. I pretty much liked Big Tom before that, and then
Yeah,
the fake out that didn't fly with me.
no, like it's still like Lex's jury speech is the one that like just makes me roll my eyes, but like I saw it coming based off of how he reacted in game to the news that Shapiro was sticking together. But Rob could have handled things better. I still refuse to feel bad for Lex at all because he did the same thing to Ethan and Colby before that. So he just
Yeah.
got outplayed. But I'd be interested in seeing Lex play again, though. You're like the older, more mature version of Lex. And like Lex was a lot older than Rob at the time anyway. But
Hmm.
I'd
Yeah,
be
all
interested in
like
seeing what
20 years later.
2024 Lex plays the game like. Okay, so do we have anything else from All Stars before we move into Heroes versus Villains? I think All Stars is probably one of my favorite Rob seasons. Like Redemption Island is the one he wins, but All Stars he's almost as dominant against a better cast. So that might be my favorite Rob. Of his games, All Stars is probably my favorite. So shout out to his game there. Moving forward to Heroes versus Villains, so it's another early exit, unfortunately, but memorable time while there. Like, what sticks out to you guys from Boston Rob on Heroes versus Villains?
Almost think it ties into Redemption Island, and it's the birth of this rivalry between two players who both haven't won, who both think they're the best player of all time.
Yeah, I almost mentioned this on our confessionals last week. It's just a funny one. Russell has a confessional talking about Rob, and this is kind of the birth of the rivalry because they haven't really interacted yet. Talking about how Rob thinks he's this father of the tribe, and he's not the daddy. I am. I don't even like the Red Sox. I'm an Astros fan. And, like, just Russell coming right out of the gate with not liking Rob really set up the pre-merge on the Villains tribe. It really kind of became about the two of them gathering numbers against each other.
Right.
A battle which Rob had won, by the way, until Tyson did his thing.
Until Tyson screwed himself over.
But
And that is a fantastic blindside. But
yeah, and you know, a lot of people, and rightfully so, people give Tyson crap, and he deserves it. But a little bit of credit, I feel like, should go to Russell there for. I don't know what percentage of this was Russell, but Russell did something there. He talked Tyson into it a little bit, even if Tyson was already thinking about it. So,
yeah, he
mostly dumb move by Tyson, but shout out to Russell for kind of a good move there.
And then he knew how to play the idol correctly on another person too, which we had never seen up until that point.
It's brilliant. But Rob's plan was brilliant there. If Tyson had just stuck to it, they had the numbers. They knew they had the numbers. I'd love to know what was running through Tyson's head there, because that's truly, it's the turning point of the season, because it gives Russell the power position, and he basically has that the rest of the game. But also, that was Tyson's move was the downfall of Rob this season, I think. Because then Russell has the numbers on Villains Tribe, and Rob goes home shortly after Tyson does. So.
Yeah, but if Rob took control and like Russell was voted out there, he probably gets to like drive it to the end game.
Yeah, it would come down to jury management.
Yeah.
Russell.
I'm going to throw out an interesting idea that I've had watching this, and I don't know what you guys think, but I'm curious to know what you guys think. If Rob beats Russell in the pre-merge, I don't think that this season plays out as heroes versus villains the whole way through. I think you get this kind of reconnection between Boston Rob and Sandra and Rupert and Jerry.
Yeah.
Kind of going to the end together.
Try to make a cross-tribe alliance. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. I could see that. I think whether Rob wins or not, if he's outlast Russell, comes down to what did he learn from All Stars? Because Russell and Heroes versus Villains essentially did what Rob did in All Stars of playing really well strategically, playing cutthroat, but loses because you had terrible jury management. Would Rob have had better jury management and learned from All Stars, or would he have done the same thing and had the same result? I think that's that question, and no one but him could have answered that.
Yeah.
But eventually he wins that season or not.
Eventually, and this thing about Rob is that, of course, like he started off as this arrogant, cocky guy, but then he eventually learned to have better relationships with the jury, and that's how he was able to win.
Yeah. Exactly. Even on his winning season, he certainly has his cocky, arrogant moments, though. But they're just in confessionals instead.
I was just going to say, he makes sure to either have those moments with the camera and not with the other players, or if he does have those moments with the other players, like Christina, he makes sure that they're nowhere close to the jury.
Yeah. And again, going back to our confessionals episode last week, we talked about in Redemption Island, one of Rob's most iconic confessionals is on a reward, he finds an idol clue and just tosses it into a volcano.
Tucks into the volcano.
I love it. And like Rob, his confessionals have always been like this. And like this summer, like May and June, my mom and I watched Deal or No Deal Island finally that he's on. And he's still like this now. And I assume it'll be like this on Traders, where he's this great brand of like funny and endearing that draws you in, but also just so cocky at the same time. It's a great mix. It's great television. I'm always down for more of him on my screen when it comes to confessionals. I'm so excited he's going to be on Traders.
Not trying to get too far ahead because we already passed this, but it wasn't really part of the show. He brings the exact same cockiness to Amazing Race.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Not many people have made that game cutthroat, but his first season, he does. He pays a cab driver to leave.
Else quit the challenge so he can't get eliminated, and bribing bus drivers in Peru with other teams' money while not paying his share, and stealing people's taxis and paying 2.5 times as much as they were going to do. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
One of my
favorite. And it's the early season, so that like bribing, what he did in episode 2 with like trying to bribe the people at the bus station to not tell the other teams that they found the best bus, it wouldn't be allowed, but it was genius at the time.
One of my favorite moments from that season is when the whole cast, like all the teams left, have made it onto this plane. And at this point, none of them like Rob and Amber. And part of this was...
Yeah, I know what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Before what I'm about to talk about, one of the teams would like turn their Jeep over or something. And people were freshly mad at Rob and Amber because they drove by the accident and didn't stop. Like, whatever. Enough people have stopped. You don't all need to stop. But Rob and Amber end up making it onto this plane last second. And the eye rolls and annoyance of every other team on that plane is hysterical. That's one of the funniest moments of the season to me, as someone that was rooting for them that season.
For me, and I just thought I'd give the quote because Seth brought it up about when I was mentioning bribing the bus driver. I think that's my favorite Rob moment of this season is when he says, all 4 of us teams decided to all pay the bus company $5 to let us off first. But then he goes, what they don't know is I put my $5 back in my pocket and offered him 15.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, and then he just smirks at the camera. I love that.
I love the combination of funny, endearing, but also so freaking cocky, because it's a rare combination. Usually either people are funny and endearing or likable,
or cocky,
or they're cocky, and he somehow manages to do both.
Yeah, it's charisma. It's natural charisma.
There's definitely a large portion of the fan base and of fan jury specifically that doesn't like him, but I would venture to say a majority of the people do like him on some level. Maybe not the big fans that we are, but even on a season like Heroes versus Villains, where he goes early, he's one of it's a Rob season still. Like, he's one of the most memorable parts of it, even.
Yeah, up to his boot. So.
Yeah, and it's funny. We talked about how his first season in Marquesas, he made the jury, but he made the merge, but didn't make the jury, because a lot of times back then the merge boot didn't make the jury.
Right.
Heroes versus Villains, the jury starts pre-merge for some weird whatever reason. I'm pretty sure that that might have been the only time it happened. It's the only time I can remember right now. And Rob still misses the jury somehow. But yeah, shout out to Heroes versus Villains' game structure, though, because Courtney and Coach both making the jury without making the merge was an interesting choice. But
yeah, that was kind of common in like that era Survivors. Like the final three, they would have a bigger jury. So like
Yeah.
a couple members, players booted pre-merge would still get to be on the jury, like Courtney and Coach, and then they merged at 11.
It's just interesting to me to have pre-merge boots on the jury, because at the end of the day, they're voting for a winner with players that they may or may not have even played with at all.
Yeah.
But and I get the bigger jury for sure. I guess at some point they just started merging sooner, because I don't remember the pre-merge jurors being happening very many times. But do we have any final heroes versus villains thoughts before we kind of move into Redemption Island?
It's time for the winning season.
Yeah.
Wait, I got one more thing for heroes
Yeah, what's
versus
up?
villains. Yeah, that part where he's like, once again, I'm on the buffoon tribe, and he gets physically sick from
Yeah.
doing all that work. Do you just think that was like really real, or was he acting there?
I don't know. The tears in his eyes when he says this game is getting the best of me.
Yeah.
Every time I'm like, okay, this seems out of character, but I don't know. Medical let him stay, so it couldn't have been that bad.
Yeah. They let Ethan stay on the edge of extinction after he passed out, so
Yeah. It's funny though that he said he was on the buffoon tribe again, because the season he was on before this, he had Shapira, which was the dominant tribe of the season.
Right.
So
dominant tribe, but like I think Rob was referring to a confessional that he makes in All Stars, where even though Chappelle is the dominant tribe, he still was making a comment about we have Rob C digging in the sand, and we have Tom drunk, and we have Sue. Who's Sue?
well,
Yeah, so I think he was just referring to like how much work he did around camp, not really the
yeah,
gameplay or the numbers they had.
that's fair. Moving into Redemption Island, I'll start with this thought, because Brett mentioned that Russell was kind of never a part of Zapatera, never was given a chance. He did it to himself because it was based on his former gameplay, but never given a chance on Zapatera. Whereas Rob just kind of was able to take over and run Ometepe. I feel like that same dynamic happens still if you swap Rob and Russell. I think Zapatero was just anti-returnee, and whoever they got, they were going after immediately. Russell may not have done as good with Ometepe, but I feel like the players, I mean, clearly with Rob, they got kind of starstruck to have a returning player. So I feel like Russell would have lasted a lot longer with Ometepe than Zapatera.
Yeah, it's an interesting what if to think about if Rob pulled the purple buff because Zavatera admittedly, they're a better strategic group than Ometepe is.
Yeah, they're more annoying too, though, at least to me.
Yeah, they're less likable.
I like Stephanie on that tribe, and that's about it. Sometimes Ralph, but
Yeah, and even Mike, he was okay.
yeah. But like Julie, for example, on Zapatera, like I don't.
Oh, didn't like her.
No, you're burying people's shorts because they are outlasting you in the game. Go away. Now that's Philip, so I get it, but yeah, and I love Rob executes pretty much everything perfectly here.
You have the much better characters on that tribe who I think know the show a lot better, and that's Philip, that's Ashley, Andrea, Matt.
Yeah.
They were just a better, more entertaining tribe to watch as a fan.
Yeah, Matt makes the mistake of coming back into the game though and telling Rob, "Hey, I didn't do it, but I thought about turning on you," which gets him sent right back. So, not the best move from him, but Rob going to the end with Philip, who drove everyone absolutely insane, and Natalie, who just kind of went along with things. That's the perfect two people to go to the end with, because even if the jury hates you, there's no way they can argue. Other than Ralph, for some reason, there's no way anyone could argue that Natalie or Philip deserved the win more than Rob.
Yeah, and like I don't know the source for this, but I've heard that Ralph only voted for Philip so that Natalie would get third. So if it was a final two between Rob and one of the others, I think he wins unanimously.
That's interesting. I would have just assumed he didn't want to vote for Rob because Zapatero was very much the Rob and his minions mindset, which
Well, yeah,
still
and he's very
happens.
pro Ashley, so
Yeah. I'm curious if that's true, and I believe it, but I'm curious why he was ticked off with Natalie that much. Like she really didn't even do that much. I don't unless that was why, but
well, I guess
Probably,
like
yeah.
Natalie was more of a follower, and then Ralph even says like in his final vote to Philip, he's like, "I love you, man."
yeah. Oh, Philip. I've said on here before that we need to get Philip and Coach on a tribe together sometime just to see what happens.
Yeah.
Just get both of the like delusional, entertaining, but annoying players on a tribe together and see if they either work together or drive each other insane. But
Yeah, honestly, those would have been the better captains for South Pacific, Coach and Philip
yeah.
instead of Coach and Ozzy.
Oh gosh. Yeah. And after this past season, I'll throw Q in there a little bit to a lesser extent because
He has some of that energy, yeah.
he does. I won't put him quite on the same level. I was calling him Coach Burdette for a few episodes, but
Just on
yeah,
the note of you guys bringing up different players, because I have to look what it was, but I heard a rumor back at the time that like originally Rob versus Russell was supposed to be later, and I want to say it was Coach that was rumored to actually be on this season, but alongside Rich, and then Rich wasn't allowed out of the country at the time.
I've heard that Rich was supposed to be on Redemption Island. I didn't realize it was him and Coach. I always thought it was supposed to be him and Rob for some reason.
Yeah, I thought so too.
In my
It's like,
mind, I
yeah,
could be
Rich
wrong.
was supposed to be on Redemption Island, but he wasn't allowed to leave the United States because he was in jail.
Yeah, because he didn't pay taxes on the million that he won.
Yeah.
But
And then South Pacific, and then at one point, Shane Powers from Panama was going to be on that season.
but shout out to Rich though. Going back to All Stars for a second, we were just talking about the great characters and fun character moments from that season. One of my funniest confessionals to me is I got bit by a shark, so I bit the shark back. Shout out
Yeah.
to Rich for that. That moment makes me laugh every time I see it. Just who else would think to bite the shark other than him? But going back to Redemption Island, this season it was really a perfect storm, and Rob just executes it perfectly. The season gets flack and accused of being rigged for him, that they gave him this less than stellar cast of newbies, and it was just for. I don't think it was rigged. I think the elements were perfect, and he executed his game plan perfectly. It's masterclass from him there.
Yeah. And if it was really rigged, I think production wanted Russell to go farther so we
Yeah,
could have seen more of that rivalry. That's a big criticism of Redemption Island.
yeah. Well, and everyone says the big criticism that annoys me is, oh, it was Rob's fourth time playing, and he was with all newbies. Like it was Russell's third time, and he was with newbies also, but he still
That
went
doesn't
for
matter. If
third.
anything, that makes him more of a target. And he
That's
was able to
not
overcome
exactly.
that.
I think people don't like Rob, so they want to discredit the season that he won. Survivor Twitter is full of it. It's not going to go
Oh
away,
yeah,
but
I
that
see it.
doesn't make
And
it
I
go away.
and I still stand with what I said. It's a top 10 season.
I like him. I rank it higher than most people because I'm a fan of him. The rest, like, admittedly, there's Andrea, there's Philip, there's memorable people that return. The cast as a whole isn't great, but I just love his dominance. I love great gameplay, so I do like
And
it.
then I also love Philip too. Philip is one of my favorite characters in the show's history. So.
Philip, I simultaneously think he's hilarious, but just he also annoys me. It's not like Coach, where like
Yeah, he'd be annoying to play with,
he would.
but on TV, great character.
Like anytime I watch Token Chains, at least once or twice per episode, which I'm usually watching alone, I audibly say like I verbally say out loud, "Shut up, coach," at least once an episode, sometimes twice. It's
Yeah.
not like that with it's not near that level with me for Philip, but Philip does grate my nerves a little bit after a whole season of it. He more so on Karamoan, but Malcolm kind of takes care of that in Karamoan. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, Redemption Island. We've talked about it a lot, but it's just incredible gameplay from him. I still feel like you can make the argument All Stars was a better game because it was still dominant, but against better competition. But Redemption Island is where he pulled the win out. And at the end of the day, that's what's most important. So,
Yeah. And even
Absolutely.
that is one of the most dominant wins of all time.
to me, it is the most dominant win of all time. I'd put him at 1, Kim at 2, and then I have to think about it.
Yeah.
I
And then
used
I'm the other way because Kim was just adored by the jury. So I do have her at number 1, but Rob's still second.
the thing. Then this is the other thing that annoys me. People like to disvalue Rob's win in Redemption Island because he was dominating over a lackluster cast gameplay wise. Kim's cast wasn't any better.
Right.
She doesn't
And
get the
probably
same
worse.
criticism at all.
Yeah.
And I love Kim. This isn't a knock on Kim. It's more of a knock on Survivor Twitter than anything, because that's where I see that the most. But I'm thinking now, I used to put Natalie at 3 just because her end game was so dominant. But as I'm thinking about this now, if I'm talking about dominant games, I think I can make an argument for D at 3, just because, I mean, she just dominated that season. I talked about it a ton on here, but
And D's win is really good. It's probably the best one of the new era, but it's like
oh
that final 5 round was
yeah,
so bad.
to me, like D is head and shoulders the best player in the new era for me for this reason. Dominated in challenges, 1, 2, maybe 3 immunities, I think. Socially, very good. Good enough relationships that she had 2 number ones that both knew about each other and neither one ever wanted to take the other one out. But she also just was good socially to the point where people were actively playing in D's best interest over their own a few times. And just anytime someone said her name, they went home that episode. So I love her game. But back to Rob, do we have anything else from Redemption Island? We talked about the dominance level of the win. We talked about how well he executed his game. Do we have any other final thoughts before we go to his final season?
Yeah, so it's funny that we talked a lot about the game, but we didn't talk about the twist, Redemption Island.
Oh,
We
true.
think that was geared to be in Rob's favor, like if he got voted out to get back in.
It might have been, but it sounds like they didn't know if he was one of the captains or not for sure. So I'm not going to come out and say they invented the twist for him.
Yeah, I
But
don't think he did either because he didn't even need it. So
yeah.
Flew off, but I think they definitely invented it, knowing whether it be Rob, be Russell, be Hatch, that when they were thinking about having 2 returning players and only 2, not a whole tribe go, what we want to make sure that the audience gets to see whoever we're bringing back, even if both tribes just turn on them in week 1 and 2.
Yeah. And I will say, if we're talking
With
about
something like
players,
Redemption Island, you get to see those returning players for at least the first 3-4 weeks of the show.
yeah. The one thing that annoys me with Redemption Island is that they have to throw their buff in the fire when they leave. Because, like, if I'm a player, I would want to keep that. But
yeah.
That was dumb.
that annoys me every time I see it. But if we're talking about players that Redemption Island was geared perfectly for, an even better example than Rob is the very next season with Ozzy.
Mhm.
Like
Spent
watching
a
Ozzy on
good portion of the game there.
watching Ozzy work Redemption Island, I'm like, okay, this if this had been the first season they'd done it, I would have questioned if it was invented for him. But he even gets himself voted out because he knows he'll win a redemption duel and come back in.
Yeah, so they'd be tied to
One
numbers.
of the only strategic things I think I've seen him do. But
Yeah.
yeah, Ozzy gets more annoying to me each time he comes out. Other than Game Changers, he wasn't terrible there. We just didn't see a ton of him.
Yeah,
But
Game Changers
So
did
do we
pretty much
want to move
nothing.
on to Robin Footy?
yeah, I do want to say this though. I wrote this down on my notepad here. You said we saw a very different version of Rob in 40, Brett, when you were doing your overview. And like different as a person, an older, yes. But I would argue that different as a player, not really. I think he got voted out because he wasn't that different as a player and because he tried to use the buddy system and lockdown camp with winners instead of the Redemption Island cast. So I thought of that during your overview when you said we saw a different version of Rob. Not
Percent. I'm one man at a different stage in life compared to his other 4 seasons. But yeah, absolutely a very similar strategy. And I would, well, we'll eventually get into this, but I would say the fact that Rob can't adapt his game in 40 is what leads to his downfall before the merge.
yeah, and to be fair, Rob and Parvati, maybe some others, Sandra probably, were never winning winners at war. The target level, the mystique, the lore was just too big. Now, Rob doesn't do himself any favors because he's, like I said, he tries to pull the same like Godfather parent stuff that he did in Redemption Island with a lackluster cast with an all-winner cast that knows what they're doing. But I don't feel like he was ever winning this season. I feel like the target level was too big on him.
No, exactly. He had too big of a target. Him, like you said, Parvati, Sandra, just no chance of winning. But at least Rob, unlike Amber, was kept around a little bit because he is a meat shield. So
Yeah. And I will say, Sele is one of my favorite tribes ever just because of the collection of people. It's the first buff I bought, but which, by the way, I only have buffs from 40 and forward because older season buffs are ridiculously priced on eBay. I don't even know how people pay that much for those. But anyway, I do love it was short lived, but I love the old school alliance of Rob, Ethan, and Parvati on Sele. Just those three working together was incredible to me, and they are still like besties outside of the game, the three of them. So
Interaction that we get in the first episode, where especially the fact that we just talked about heroes versus villains, you get this interaction between Rob and Perv. You want to work together, and no one is going to ever see it coming. That
yeah,
is so smart.
especially because of heroes versus villains specifically.
yeah, yeah. Rob knew he had to get in Parvati's good graces from the beginning, and he
Yeah,
did.
I just thought of this. Is Ethan in that group of people who just were never winning winners at war?
Yeah, I think Ethan like had a fair shot. Like he wasn't a huge target. He's just too old school of a player
Yeah,
to win in a modern season, you know? So
I think the story of what he's been through in life might have put a target on him. Not so much the big legend of the game like Rob, Parv, Sandra that have played 3 or 4 times at that point, but it would have been hard for Ethan to win. I will say I think the old school alliance could have gone a little bit farther had Danny Boatwright not stood there right in front of Ben and said, "There's an old school thing going."
old school strong.
Hmm.
And then
Say
Ethan's
that
like,
if you don't have the
he's
majority.
not old school, right?
Danny was, I mean, good TV, and I hadn't watched Guatemala yet at this point because I started watching live at 36. So this was my introduction to Danny, was just her being a mess on Winners at War. But I am curious what could have happened had that moment not happened. Because from there forward, like the Adam, Ben group, Michelle and Jeremy were kind of in the middle. There was a new group and an old group, and then Michelle and Jeremy. But that was really, I felt like, the turning
Yeah,
point for the
and
old
Denise
school group
too.
was,
Which Natalie was
yeah,
part of that group too.
I forget Denise was
you
on
bring
this.
up, Bruce,
Do what?
What'd you say?
while you bring those two names, I want to quickly go in. I mean, it can't be a Rob episode of Winners at War without me talking about probably my favorite interaction between my two favorite players that are still alive, being Rob and Michelle.
Yeah.
And Rob's quote, "If you win, you win, the end." That is my favorite moment of the season.
Yeah. And I'm surprised we made it this long into the episode without you referencing Michelle. That might be a new record. But real quick, because I mentioned Danny, and this is really off topic, I'm just curious. We've done an episode on this. We have different viewpoints. Seth, if you were a juror in Guatemala, where is your jury vote going?
You know, that is one of my toughest votes, but since I feel like favoritism, they're pretty equal. I think Danny had more control in the game, so and just narrowly, I would vote for Danny in that final two.
That's fair. I get it. I voted for Steph and argued for that, and Brett was kind of sharing for Danny. We did an episode on that, so I was just curious where you stood. That's one where I don't agree with it, but I understand it. I get it. And again, Steph's jury management probably could have been better. That's usually what it comes down to when you lose a close vote like that. Well,
But it wasn't close.
that
It was
one
6-1. So
yeah, that one wasn't super close. I realized it as soon as I said it, but yeah,
To some of the things that you said earlier, Bruce, I just wanted to add into that discussion on that interaction between Michelle and Rob in this episode, because I think that was also so influential for the audience as a whole, not just for them talking as players. But you talked a lot today, Bruce, about Survivor Twitter. And I think that's such a big thing, is when you hear Michelle and Rob interacting, and Michelle says, "My brother and my sister aren't that happy about me coming out here because my win was so controversial." And Rob comes back with his famous, "If you win, you win, the end." It's like, that's more of even better to think about if he's talking right to the audience. And that's that everybody on this show is a real person trying to win. They're not trying to earn the satisfaction of Twitter.
yeah, and I don't want to take too many shots at Survivor Twitter. I enjoy discussing Survivor on that platform a ton. It's just, as a whole, it can be kind of an exhausting place sometimes. But
And you too, and I talk about it a lot, but I think it's important for anyone listening just to remember that everyone on the show is all you when you go back to that day that you recorded your audition video and end at Final Tribal Council, the whole purpose of being there is to win the game, not always to be liked or to gain followers or to have the audience say that you were the most deserving player. If you win, you win. The end.
yeah,
The best player gets the jury votes to win the game.
yeah, because at its forefront, Survivor is a social game. You could
yeah,
have the best strategic game, the best physical game, and still not win. And Michelle did get very lucky, but the jury liked her. So
yeah. I didn't want to interrupt you, so I didn't. But when you said you can play a great strategic and physical game and still lose, I was gonna like pretend to cough and say Russell while I was coughing. So
yeah.
I still don't know if he's learned that it's a social game yet, because he still complains about losing. But I will say this though, and there's not a ton to talk about with him on Winners at War, but he gets swapped onto the new green tribe, Yanuya. No, Yara.
Yara, that's what it's called. Yeah.
There's a couple, like when they expand and add the third green tribe, there's a couple of them that start with a Y, and I get him confused.
Yeah.
Not that he was, again, not that Rob was ever going deep, but he gets swapped with about the two worst possible people from Sayla he could have gotten swapped with, because Adam and Ben both can't stand him or each other, and he's not their biggest fans. I'm curious what
And
would
then
have
Sophie and
happened if that
Sarah,
happened.
he has no connection to from
Yeah.
the other tribe.
And he and Adam have actively locked horns already, because Adam tried to go after Parvati. So
It would be interesting if, say, he got swapped with Parvati, and that might have gave him a one, and maybe then he starts looking across to the other tribe and could say, is Tyson here? Is Sandra here? Is somebody that I know here? But that didn't happen, and he was done.
And the same thing for Parvati. She gets swapped onto New Sele, which from what I've heard and read, pretty much all had pre-game connections. So like she really wasn't ever going anywhere on that tribe. But neither one of them were
from
ever,
what I remember reading at the time, that it was Ewell's strategy to pregame with all the new kids,
which worked out really well because it became an old school versus new school season really quickly. So
and Ewell was pregaming with Wendell and with Nick and with Michelle and with Mike Holloway, who didn't get cast. But
yeah. In which it's funny because the same thing kind of happened with Cambodia. If you listen to Talking with T-Bird, she's referenced a couple times talking to people or like getting calls from people thinking she was going to be on Second Chances and pre-gaming for that one. So
yeah.
Well, didn't they have that season? It was 32 people, and then the top 20, 10 males, 10 females made the cast.
And I wasn't a part of the Survivor community yet, but looking back, I'm still kind of shocked that Monica Padilla, no offense, got on Second Chances.
Me too.
Didn't.
I wouldn't have voted for her, but I wasn't a fan yet either.
I have heard many people talk about how T-Bird should have gotten on, and like this many people feel this way. How did this not happen? It confuses me.
I told you this, Boost, before, but for Seth, half the people I voted for, if not more, didn't even get on. So I voted for T-Bird, I voted for Shane, I voted for Nat 10, I voted for Jim Rice.
Oh gosh. So before we move into a line blindside first boot, do we have any closing thoughts from Winners at War? And I'll also open this up to Amazing Race and Deal or No Deal Island, just to kind of encapsulate his whole TV career.
I think we covered it, but now that you add to encapsulate his TV career, maybe a little shout out. Look out for something new on the Reality Realm Podcast Network once we get a premiere date for the Traders.
Yeah. I will say, from Deal or No Deal Island, the finale and the way he goes home on that season is just so irritating to me. Because it had been basically him and Aaron, I think, against everyone for like half the season at that point. And he doesn't even go home because they beat him. He goes home because he wasn't listening to the rules on a challenge. And it annoys me so much because he was this close.
Yeah.
But
sorry, Rob, but I have not actually finished Deal or No Deal Island.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But it's I know Rob loses, so
okay. Okay, I felt bad. I thought I had spoiled it for you for a second, but like it's still. I knew he lost going into it. It was still really entertaining. It's the same Rob we always see, cocky but entertaining, and people hating him. So it's a great dynamic. Excited to see it on Traders. I'm really hoping he is a trader, actually. But so moving into a line blindside first boot. Do you want to go first, Brett?
Sure. Let's go with some players that have memorable interactions with Rob, be it positive, be it negative, whatever it might be. So your options for both of you today for a line blindside first boot are Kathy Vavrick O'Brien, Michelle Fitzgerald, and Philip Shepard.
Philip's gone first.
I got mine.
I'm not Rob. I can't control
just
Philip.
Just so you know, I paused and made it look like I was thinking just because I wanted to see your reaction when I said Philip.
That's fair. No, Philip goes first just because I can't control him the way Rob did on 22. That's too big of a wild card for me to trust. It was Michelle, and who was the third one?
Kathy.
Yeah, I'm gonna align with Kathy and blindside Michelle. Normally, if there's only one winner, I take them out first because that feels like the easy move. Philip kind of changes that strategy just by being himself. So
My mission by putting Philip in, and that's make Bruce not first boot Michelle, has succeeded.
fair enough. Yeah, I cheat. That's my strategy for this game. If there's only one winner, they go first. That makes it easy.
Yeah. And then that's what I would do, even though I love Michelle, but she's the only winner there. I'd have to send her home first. Probably align with Philip just because I think I could beat him. And then yeah, blindside Kathy.
Did you have three names, or did you want me to go next?
You mean me?
Yeah,
I did not come in with three names, no.
that's fine. I can go. I forgot to mention that we do this, so we can end it here. I am going to go with allies across his seasons. And going chronologically, I will start with Cleopatra herself, Sarah from Marquesas. Great confessional from Sean there, by the way. I will go with Amber on All Stars, and then jump all the way to 40 and throw Parvati in there as the third one.
Huh.
I am gonna first boot Sarah. She seemed to just not do much of anything in the game and therefore can't really help you get forward.
Yeah.
I'm gonna blindside Parvati as the best player here, but unlike most people who would want to first boot Parvati, having taken her online course and having that pre-existing relationship with Parvati, I want her on my jury, and therefore I'm gonna ally with Amber.
That's smart.
Yeah. And I was thinking the same thing because of the blindside Parvati. It's one, she's a meat shield, and then two, good resume move to get her out. And then, but between Sarah and Amber, I'd probably say Amber is the first boot, and then again she's a winner, and then
Yeah.
take Sarah to the end. Align with.
This was a fun episode, guys. Seth, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
And
you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me, guys. Like I know each other like a couple years from Survivor fan jury, so cool to
yeah,
finally talk to you.
be watching out. Tribal Council Chat, guys. The next 3 weeks we'll be continuing the Mount Rushmore series, and be checking out the other Reality Realm shows, Pit Stop Pals, New Era Challengers, and something new coming when Traders launches. And with that, grab your torches and head back to camp. Bye, everyone.